Hello everyone and welcome back to Red Room Stories. I know many of you tune into these tales to help you drift off to sleep. So before we settle in, I'd love for each of you to leave a comment sharing where in the world you're listening from. And if you're enjoying the episodes, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Now let's get comfortable, relax, and begin. The fog rolled through the streets of the small, forgotten town of Eldermere like a living thing, obscuring the crumbling buildings that had long since surrendered to decay. A singular bulb flickered above the old diner, its light barely parting, the gloom that enveloped the road. Each step Alex took felt heavier, as if the town itself were clutching at their ankles, unwilling to let go. It was a bitterly cold night in late November. The wind carried a stench of rot and the echo of distant whispers that slithered through the air, haunting the desolate silence. They had come seeking the truth about their family's dark legacy. But what awaited them was a far more insidious darkness. Eldermere had been Alex's home once, a childhood sanctuary filled with laughter that faded into shadow when the incidents began. Strange occurrences, disappearances, people simply vanishing without a trace, leaving behind only hushed gossip and fearful glances. The town, a relic from another time, bore the marks of a place that was deeply rooted in superstitions, where old tales wove themselves into the fabric of daily life. The tantalizing thought of unraveling the mystery of their uncle's unexplained death pulled Alex back like a siren's call, leading them into the very heart of the gloom. As Alex wandered deeper into the town, the chill intensified, wrapping around them like a vice. The air tasted metallic, sharp against their tongue as they passed the old library, its windows shattered, books spilling out like entrails. They could almost hear the faint echoes of children's laughter floating through the air. But the realization that it was merely an echo of the past chilled them more than the biting wind. A cold sweat beaded along their spine, igniting a primal instinct to flee, but curiosity held them captive. In the center of Eldermere stood an ancient oak, twisted and gnarled, its thick branches reaching desperately for the ink-black sky. It was here that the townsfolk spoke of the disappearances, of rituals whispered away in the hush of night, of a malevolent force that demanded tribute. Alex felt an inexplicable pull towards the tree, a magnetic dread that gnawed at them, beckoning them closer despite the shivers racing up their arms. They could almost make out etchings in the bark, symbols perhaps like those they had seen in their grandmother's journal, pages stained with age and ink. That is when the wind shifted, carrying with it a low hum, a melody that tickled the corners of their mind. It began slow, then picked up urgency as if urging Alex to remember something lost. With each note, memories flooded back. Images of their uncle standing beneath the oak, speaking in hushed tones to shadowy figures that never truly materialized in their recollections. Shadows danced at the periphery of their vision, and when they turned, nothing was there, but they could feel the weight of unseen eyes. The temperature dropped another degree, and Alex shivered violently. They turned away from the tree, heart pounding, pulses of adrenaline urging them to run. But their legs felt rooted, paralyzed by something far more insidious than fear. And then, suddenly, it came. Whispers that curled around them, rising above. The wind, hurling accusations and slander, distorting into a cacophony of disembodied voices that gnawed at the edges of reality. They were here. The lost were here, clamoring for attention. With resolve drawn from a well of desperation, Alex stumbled to the diner, pushing through the creaking door. The smell of stale grease and decay hit them like a wall. Tables were overturned, chairs askew, as if abandoned in a hurry. A chaotic snapshot of a moment frozen in fear. The back door swung slightly, and with a resonance that made their skin crawl, a chill snaked along their spine. There was something in the back room, shrouded in shadow. An urge pulled them forward, the desire to uncover the gnawing truth that had haunted their family for generations. The back room was small and suffocating, filled with the scent of damp earth and something else, something iron-like that crept into their nostrils. A trap door lay slightly ajar, and the musty scent of dark soil wafted up, mingling with a sickly sweetness. With shaking hands, Alex lifted the creaking door open, revealing a set of narrow stairs spiraling down into darkness. Each step entered them into an ancient world, one that seemed untouched by the passage of time, where shadows moved independently, and the air thickened with centuries of dread. The atmosphere morphed into something raw and pulsating as they descended. It was a hollow thrum that resonated in their bones, compelling them forward, stripping away logic and reason. They found remnants of offerings, small trinkets, personal effects, and blood-stained stones, each a testament to desperate pleas and incomprehensible sacrifices. A heavy unease settled in their chest. They had struck upon the very heart of the town's devilry. At the end of the tunnel, a flickering light revealed an altar, and there, trapped in a lattice of dark roots, lay luminescent orbs, pulsating softly, like the beat of a heart. The flow of energy thrummed at the edges of Alex's mind, filling them with an overwhelming sense of purpose. But the truth emerged like a polluted flood. They recognized the faces caught within the glowing spheres, the despairing expressions of those lost to Eldermere. It was their uncle among them, and with horror, Alex understood that this was not merely a legacy but a bound curse. Panic fueled their flight back up the stairs as the walls constricted, engulfing them in darkness. The whispers grew frantic, clawing at the edges of their sanity as shadows closed in, forming shapes, specters of the damned. They burst into the diner, gasping for breath, the door slamming shut behind them. Eyes wide, they took in the familiar, yet distorted world. The diner now pulsed with an otherworldly glow, and the memories of laughter melded with terror, with faces pressed against the dust-laden windows, faces long lost and feasting in the shadows. Eldermere wasn't just a town. It was a parasite, a devourer that fed on fear and sacrifice. In that moment, Alex realized the truth. Leaving was impossible. This place had always called to them, like a mother drawing a child back into darkness. The silence in the diner deepened, pregnant with unuttered screams and the weight of lives devoured. They turned slowly, the pallor of acceptance washing over them as shadowy figures formed around them, whispering the dreadful tune of inevitability, a melody promising that some legacies are better left buried, and some truths are never meant to be unearthed. Alex's heart raced as they surrendered to the pull, to the whispers that embraced their very soul, an acceptance that fractured their mind. The fog swirled outside, thickening, veiling the town in creeping despair, while within the diner transformed, the walls grinning leering smiles at the new offering that Eldermere had found once more. In the heart of the decaying town of Grey Hollow, an uncanny mist unfurled like tendrils of smoke, weaving through the skeletal remains of houses long abandoned. The sun's light flickered as if fighting to penetrate the thick pall, casting distorted shadows that danced along the cracked pavement. Eliza, a solitary artist, stood at the edge of this spectral landscape, clutching her sketchbook with fingers that trembled not just from the chill, but from an unsettling curiosity that drew her closer to the gloom. This was her escape, she had assured herself, a retreat from the suffocating expectations of city life. Yet even now the very air felt alive. pressing in on her with an intelligence that set her instincts on edge. The locals had warned her cryptically about the mist, claiming it absorbed the very essence of one's spirit, making those who wandered too deep disappear without a trace. She had dismissed their tales as mere superstition, relics of an ignorance she had long left behind. Yet, as the mist thickened, curling around her ankles, she felt its cool familiarity creep beneath her skin, an unwelcome embrace that whispered of secrets long buried beneath the town's cracked facade. The day's sketches had fallen away in her mind, replaced by a compulsion to delve deeper into the heart of Grey Hollow, where abandoned buildings stood like haunted sentinels waiting for her to unlock their long-forgotten stories. With each step, the world around her warped subtly, colors bleeding into one another. The sound of her footfalls muffled as if she walked through water rather than disintegrating leaves. She found herself drawn to an old church at the top of a hill, its steeple jutting into the sky broken and forlorn, the stained glass windows dull and clouded. It loomed above her, gray and majestic, offering an eerie invitation to explore its depths and to confront whatever rested inside. As she climbed the path, she could almost hear the heartbeat of the townsfolk, those who once congregated there, their voices echoing through the ages, sorrowfully fading like distant memories. Inside the church, the air was thick with the scent of damp stone and incense long extinguished. Shadows hung like forgotten prayers in the corners, and the silence enveloped her, pressing against her ears until she could hear her own pulse. She hesitated at the threshold of the sanctuary, her heart racing as she pushed the heavy door open, the creaking hinges sounding like a funeral dirge. The altar was overgrown with vines that twisted grotesquely, resembling skeletal fingers reaching for something just beyond their grasp. The faint glimmer of light caught her attention as it glided across the floor, drawing her deeper into the church's somber embrace. As Eliza ventured closer, she noticed the floorboards beneath her feet groaned as if protesting her presence, yet her curiosity propelled her onward. Suddenly, whispers filled the air, dissonant echoes warping her senses. They seemed to swirl from the very walls, a cacophony of sorrows that gnawed at her mind. Images flooded her thoughts, glimpses of those who came before her, their laughter turned to cries, their joys twisted into hideous despair. Eliza staggered back, heart pounding, but the whispers tightened around her, binding her to the cursed space, compelling her to listen more closely. What was it they had to share? What beckoned her into this morass of regret? It was then she caught sight of a painting on the wall, poorly executed yet strangely mesmerizing. It depicted a figure shrouded in darkness standing in a field of dying flowers, their face obscured by a hood. Beneath it was a simple inscription, "The Watcher of Lost Souls." Shivers raced down her spine, an instinctual recognition of the thing that haunted the townsfolk, the entity they feared. Anxiety twisted in her stomach as she backed away, but the whispers grew louder, more insistent, pushing her toward the painting as if it were the key to unfolding the town's haunting history. Resolutely she approached, running her fingers over the rough surface of the frame, feeling the vibrations coursing through it. Suddenly a flash of warmth struck her, like a fleeting spark of hope amidst the cold dread. The whispers transformed into words, fragmented yet intelligible. They spoke of the sins that had been committed within these walls, of bargains made, and forgotten oaths that led to unending despair. Frantic images of tormented souls flashed in her mind, faces twisted with pain, blood-stained hands praying for redemption. The walls around her began to pulse, the church breathing, alive with the memories of those who had once taken refuge here. But the clarity of their anguish turned into something darker. Tendrils of fear coiled around her throat as she felt the weight of despair growing within her. an insatiable hunger that threatened to consume her whole. The painting seemed to animate, its dark figure shifting and swirling as it reached out towards her, its hooded face threatening to unveil a truth she wasn't ready to see. Realization crashed over her like a tidal wave. The Watcher was not just a guardian of lost souls, but a collector, a harvester feeding on fear, despair, and hopelessness. Each soul it claimed only enhanced its power, transforming Grey Hollow into a purgatory where dreams went to die. Panicked, Eliza turned to flee, but the mist had thickened beyond her previous comprehension, wrapping around her, drowning her in cold panic. The sanctuary shook as the voices crescendoed into a horrifying howl, the doors of the church slamming shut, trapping her within the walls of sorrow. As she fell to her knees, the whispers morphed into a single voice that pierced through the chaos, echoing the very thoughts she had buried within herself. "You are one of us now," it sang sweetly, and she felt the grip of fate like iron chains wrapping around her heart. Fighting against the encroaching shadows, she clawed at the floor, at the walls, searching for an escape. She was not one of them, she thought desperately. But the church, the town, the mist, they pressed into her mind, weaving their dark essence into her very being. Visions of the lives lost, the mirth turned misery, flooded her senses. They began to embrace her. She felt sorrow turn to understanding, and for the first time she truly listened, absorbing the weight of their anguish. The realization came over her, painfully sweet, as she felt their despair blend with her own. As the last vestiges of her will flickered, Eliza understood the terrible truth, that she too was now woven into the very fabric of Grey Hollow, and the Watcher had not just claimed her as a captive, but as a companion in eternal suffering. The haunting pain around her faded into a strange comfort as she surrendered to the anonymity of lost souls. The church now sang to her, enveloping her completely, as all that remained were her final scenes, a painter of fear. Her canvas now, the starlit sky receding over the abandoned town, still stirring in its penitential sorrow. And as the mist swirled outside, a new artist walked the streets, one with the ephemeral whispers of the past weaving through her thoughts, forever entwined in the legend of Grey Hollow, seeking those who would wander into her reach, eager to share the same bitter fate. The village of Elder's Hollow lay nestled between steep hills, shrouded in perpetual twilight. A brackish mist rolled in from the surrounding forest, swallowing the last rays of sunlight and wrapping itself around the crumbling stone cottages that dotted the landscape. On the day Mia returned after nearly a decade away, the air was unnaturally still, charged with an unsettling anticipation that made every hair on her body prickle. The village hadn't changed, yet it felt transformed, as if the very essence of Elder's Hollow had shifted during her absence, a palpable secret brewing beneath the surface. Mia had grown up in Elder's Hollow, her childhood painted with innocent memories of laughter and games until that fateful summer when whispers began to drown out the laughter. Friends turned into shadows, and the night air became thick with something unnameable, a collective fear that made even the bravest children too terrified to venture into the dark woods that cradled the village. She had fled, seeking refuge in the city, pretending the past was a distant nightmare. But now, with her mother gone and family ties pulling her back, she could feel the sinister gravity of the place drawing her in once more. As she parked outside her childhood home, the familiar but eerie scent of damp earth and decaying leaves flooded her senses, sending a chill down her spine. The house loomed before her, its windows darkened, looking like empty eye sockets on a skull. A part of her expected to find the place overgrown, twisted, and forgotten by time, but instead it appeared kept as if biding its time, waiting for her return. The door creaked ominously as she stepped inside, and the air was thick with dust and memories, each breath a reminder of what she had tried to escape. The first night back was uneventful, save for the unsettling sense that she was not alone. Shadows flitted at the edge of her vision. Unidentifiable murmurs echoed through the corridors, and her dreams twisted into a cacophony of night monsters clawing at her sanity. She brushed it off as remnants of sleep-deprived paranoia, a cruel product of her returning to the cursed cradle of her childhood. Yet, as the days passed, the disquiet intensified. Mia began finding small objects moved, a cracked photograph of her mother, tarnished silverware, or the once vivid crayons she had used as a child scattered around the living room, as though someone was trying to revive a long-dead memory. Driven by an urge to reclaim her former self, she ventured into the woods one afternoon, following a trail once familiar. The trees loomed, gnarled branches intertwining like the fingers of a dark entity trying to grasp her. The air grew colder, and with each step deeper into the untamed wilderness, she could feel the heartbeat of the forest, a slow, pulsing rhythm that resonated eerily in her bones. Whispers emerged from the rustling leaves, indistinct and enticing, pulling her in different directions. Despite every logical fiber screaming at her to turn back, she pressed on. At the heart of the woods, she stumbled upon an ancient clearing, a place almost sacred in its desolation. Crumbling stones formed a circle around a patch of earth, dark and moist, as if something had been buried there long ago. The air hummed with a low vibration, making her insides twist. It was here that Mia felt the overwhelming sensation of being watched. A prickling awareness at the back of her neck made her spin around, yet no one stood behind her, only the ceaseless whispering of the trees. Returning home that evening, her heartbeat quickened as visions of that shadowy figure flitted across her mind. The glimpses she thought had been a trick of the light coalesced into something more sinister. The shadows in her house seemed to slither closer, edging into her periphery. Sleep became elusive as restless nights bred paranoia, each creak and groan of the home morphing into whispers of long-buried ghosts that had come to reclaim what she had taken away. Days collapsed into one another, indistinguishable and oppressive, yet Mia became obsessed with unraveling the threads of Elder's Hollow's dark past. She unearthed old journals left behind, filled with distorted tales of strange rituals, children disappearing only to return changed, empty eyes and jagged smiles masking hollow souls. Elder's Hollow had seeped into her being like a venom, rekindling the darkness she had thought she left behind. One storm-laden night, as lightning fractured the sky, illuminating the shadows like grotesque puppets, her sanity began to unravel completely. The whispers grew louder, more distinct, spilling tales of bloodlines and sacrifices, a warning wrapped in enigma. Frenzied, Mia paced the house, the air thickening around her as if the walls themselves were slowly closing in. It was then she heard an unmistakable voice, a soft, melodic chant drifting through the halls, drawing her toward the clearing deep within the woods. Compelled by a force she no longer questioned, she hurried through the forest, branches clawing at her skin like desperate hands. The clearing awaited, transformed in the moonlight, an altar of shadow and dread. Before her stood figures cloaked in black, their faces obscured but their posture unmistakably human. The rhythmic chant swelled, drowning out her thoughts, urging her closer to an unfolding horror that felt somehow familiar. As she stood at the edge of the gathered cult, realization washed over her, a surge of memories, twisted and dark. In their midst she spotted a woman, an echo from her past, eyes hollow yet pleading. Mia's breath caught as she recognized her mother, caught in a trance, swaying to the insidious rhythm. The cult turned as one, blackened figures revealing, twisted smiles beckoning her to join, to embrace what had been buried long ago. A rush of fear accelerated her pulse as she took a step back, the ground beneath her trembling, a warning wrapped in agony. The low hum intensified, transforming into a cacophony of screams and shrieks, a wretched symphony of souls trapped in torment. Mia's heart raced as the understanding sank in. This was her legacy, a choice woven into the fabric of her being, a history she could not escape no matter how far she ran. With a scream that mirrored the sound of lost children, Mia turned and fled through the thicket, tears streaking her cheeks. The forest twisted, shifting to entrap her, shadows elongating and reaching like tendrils of despair. She no longer felt like a visitor in her own body. She was a marionette, dancing on the strings of fate, her flight pushing her deeper into the clutches of something ancient and watchful. The whispering winds beckoned her back, promising salvation if only she surrendered to them. At dawn, the mist began to lift, revealing Elder's Hollow as it had always been, still hauntingly beautiful, yet irrevocably changed. Mia stood at the edge of the forest, heart torn between the memories of laughter and the chilling realization she could never sever the bond. In the distance, the cult remained, faceless and watching as if their mission was not yet complete, their whispers lingering in the air like a curse that had intertwined with her blood. In that moment, a single thought pierced through her panic. Call to accept her past. As the sun broke through the horizon, illuminating the town, she understood that the true horror of Elder's Hollow lay not just in the darkness of its woods, but in the inescapable pull of its secrets and the identity she had run from for so long. The village watched her society, a web of shadows woven through time, ready to ensnare her when she returned for good, when she finally surrendered. For here, in this haunted hollow, Mia was not merely home. She was destined to become part of its story, the horror that would echo long after she faded into the mist. She stood at the edge of the town, the fading light casting long shadows that twisted unnaturally across the cracked pavement. Blackwood Hollow was a place steeped in whispered stories, where the air hung heavy with a tension not entirely natural, as if the town were holding its breath. Abandoned houses lined the streets, their windows dark like the empty sockets of skulls, and ivy twisted around the rotting banisters, reclaiming the remnants of human life. Mia had come here to escape her memories, her past. But little did she know that Blackwood held secrets far darker than her own. It had been 2 months since she lost her brother Nathan, under circumstances she never quite understood. The unrelenting gnaw of grief persuaded Mia to leave everything behind, to seek solace in the remoteness of a town rumored to be forgotten by time itself. She rented a decrepit cabin at the edge of a forest, the kind with creaking timber and peeling paint, where the local gossip suggested something sinister lurked just beyond the tree line. But solitude felt good. It was quiet, the wind rustling, through the trees a balm for her aching heart. Yet the deeper she delved into her isolation, the more the whispers of the town began to seep into her consciousness. On her first night, a strange rustling echoed from the woods, a sound not quite animal, not quite human. It nibbled at her senses, transforming the safe embrace of evening into a suffocating blanket of foreboding. Fear chimed softly in her ears as shadows danced and swirled, each one a reminder of what she had lost. The light from her lantern flickered, illuminating the walls decorated with faded remnants of happier times, a lifetime ago. As she settled into the uneasy quiet, thoughts of Nathan blended with the low thrum of fear, creating a dissonant lullaby that tugged at her mind. The following morning, Mia decided to explore the town, her curiosity pressing against the growing anxiety nestled in her gut. The streets were empty, save for stray animals and the random gust of wind that seemed eager to lead her somewhere she wasn't ready to go. In an abandoned bookshop, she discovered a weathered journal filled with scrawled entries from someone named Evelyn, detailing strange occurrences that began with unsettling dreams and ended with a desperate call for help. Mia felt a strange kinship with the tortured words. Evelyn's descent into paranoia mirrored her own spiraling thoughts, surrounded by a place neither of them wanted to remain. Days blurred into weeks as unsettling events wove their way into her routine. At dusk, Mia often heard soft whispers, a cacophony of sighs and murmurs that echoed beyond her understanding. Every night she felt eyes upon her, the distinct sensation of being watched, yet each time she turned, nothing awaited but the cold embrace of the forest. She reached for her phone, wanting to call someone, anyone, but the signal faded like hope into the ether. The air felt thick with despair, clinging to her skin, turning the mundane into the extraordinary, and the extraordinary into nightmare. One evening, while cooking over a flickering flame, Mia caught a glimpse of a figure at the edge of the woods. It was a woman clad in tattered clothing, her hair entwined with twigs and leaves like nature's own art. Mia felt her heart skip, curiosity pulling yet again toward the enigma. She followed, drawn by an inexplicable thread, deeper into the trees until the darkness swallowed her whole. It was here that the whispers transformed, incoherent but urgent, a language of dread wrapping around her thoughts. She stumbled upon an old well, crumbling stone partially swallowed by the roots of the trees, its surface slick like a sunken grave. The murmurs heightened, swirling around her, urging her to listen, to peer into the depths she instinctively felt were void of hope. A compulsion fed by twisted yearning pushed her closer, and as the outline of her reflection collided with the dark and upheaval of memory surged forward, Nathan's face emerged within the water, smiling, taunting, his laughter echoing through the hollowed chamber of her heart. Despair clawed at her throat, the well no longer a mere relic but a vessel of torment. The whispers transformed into screams, urging her to recognize that she was not alone. The forest had eyes. The trees reached for her with gnarled branches, aching to deny her escape. Mia turned and ran, the world spinning into a slashed tapestry of bark and branches, but the shadows followed, creeping into her mind and wrapping around her sanity like a vice. She burst through the underbrush into the raw air of her cabin, collapsing onto the floor as panic exploded within her chest. The familiar creaking of the wood now felt like an omnipresent echo of malevolence. In the grip of paranoia, she scoured every corner, every crevice, searching for the intangible stalker that had ensnared her heart. As night fell once again, the line between reality and delusion blended, pulling her back into a whirlpool of grief and haunting memories. Nathan was gone. But then what if he wasn't? The realization struck her like a slap. What if the town did not just want her to remember her brother? What if it wanted something far worse? She rummaged through Evelyn's journal, seeking a clue. A remnant of truth hidden between the lines hastily scrawled in fear. As she read deeper, a chill washed over her. Evelyn had experienced the same darkness before her. The empty houses were not merely abandoned. They held echoes of those who had come before. Each resident had been swallowed whole, their essence lost to the forest, their cries absorbed into the roots beneath. Stricken with horror, she realized the whispers had become words. Her heart raced as they coalesced into a single sentence. "Join us." A deep, resonating voice faded in and out of her mind, blurring the boundary between her thoughts and the whispers of the forest. Blackwood was alive with an ancient hunger, and she was the latest meal, drawn to its insatiable grasp, ensnared by the echoes of her brother. Desperation gnawed at her resolve as Mia climbed to the attic, a final desperate refuge. Tools, remnants of lives once lived, surrounded her, but the shadows were closing in. The walls pulsed as if possessed, breathing around her with each whisper. She stumbled backward, feeling a gnawing pain within her chest. And before she could fully grasp the unfolding terror, a cold touch gripped her wrist tightly. Her vision blurred, and she felt herself slip into the well of memories, where Nathan stood waiting, still smiling, arms wide as if beckoning her home. Panic bloomed, but the pull was intoxicating. The weight of loss transformed into an unbearable desire for reunion, an urge to let go of her mortal fear and join him in whatever lay beneath. With one final trembling breath, she stepped forward, the shadows swallowing her whole. Content she was finally embracing the darkness that had always lain just beyond the surface. Back in Blackwood Hollow, Mia's cabin now stood eerily silent, the air thick around it with an inexplicable chill. The townsfolk whispered about the new ghost that roamed the forest, the one who echoed laughter now dripping with sorrow, carrying with it the warning that no one truly escapes. And beneath the surface, the whispers persisted, entangling new souls in their unyielding grasp, their longing forever echoing through the trees.